Hello, everyone. Performance Health welcomes you to our webinar today. We'd like to thank L&R for partnering with us to talk about lymphedema compression products and advanced wound care solutions. If you have any questions, please enter them into the Q&A box, and we'll try to address some of them during our Q&A time at the end of the presentation. And with that, I'd like to hand it over to Paul.
Thanks, Morgan. Much appreciated. Hello, everyone. As Morgan mentioned, my name is Paul Cercone. I am the Director of National Accounts with L&R. I've been with the company since 2008, and certainly the world of lymphedema has changed a lot in that time period. I'm sure there's some of you are that on here that have been practicing much longer and can speak to that in much more detail. But with that being said, I'm just going to be going ahead and talking a little bit about the history of our company. We are a bandaging company, but we also do have a lot of bandaging alternatives, such as garments. And then lastly, we also are a wound care company. So I'm going to be touching a little bit on all three of those points here today. So as I said, Lohmann & Rauscher is still a family-owned company. We're based in Germany as well as Vienna, Austria. They actually came in and acquired us in 2014. Before that, we were known as Solaris, which is when I was hired from 2008 to 2014. That's what we were, Solaris, and we just had the garments at that point. And then L&R came in and they said, hey, we have the bandaging and we want a bit more of a U.S. presence. And so they came in and acquired us. And so now we are under the affiliate of L&R USA. We are actually located right in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. That's where we do much of our manufacturing. Actually, if you've ever seen where the Brewers play baseball, we are essentially almost in their parking lot. We're right next to it. So on the lunch break, you can actually see a lot of people tailgating during the day. So again, located right in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. So yeah, as I said, today we're going to be talking not only about the compression bandages, but unfortunately, sometimes I think the compliance on bandaging can be difficult. And so that's where we look sometimes to some of these alternatives. So some of those might be the TributeWrap, the ReadyWrap. I'm going to go through extensively about a lot of those because those are directly correlated to the bandaging and active phase. And then lastly, I'm going to talk about ExoStrong, which is more of that maintenance daytime garment, and then kind of round it off with Debrisoft. And that is more of a wound care product, but certainly I'll kind of talk about the correlation within hyperkeratosis specifically. And then, we'll be good to go from there. So treatment of lymphedema, right? We all know, or as we may know, there is no necessarily cure for lymphedema. It's all about managing. Now, right now, the gold standard is, compression bandaging. But as I kind of mentioned, unfortunately, that compression all through the active phase is, required and usually is good because it's managed by a lymphedema therapist. However, what happens during that maintenance phase, right? So they're going from the active to the maintenance phase of treatment. And I think sometimes that's the part that can be very challenging for patients in order to keep on bandaging because of the time and the complication it requires. So that self-management, once we get past that compression bandaging part, that's a part that I'm going to focus a little bit heavier on, but certainly want to make sure that we're going through the compression bandaging because, again, right now that is known as the gold standard of treatment. So here is just a nice graph. And again, I'm going to be going through a lot of these products individually. A lot of the things that I'm going to be talking about today, this slide in particular, we have handouts. We can share a lot of these handouts with your facilities if you're ever interested in this. So this kind of goes through and just helps with, okay, skin, step one is the skin protection, the fingers and toes, padding, the focal compression bandaging. And then you can even see at the bottom there, we have some garments, because some of those garments are directly correlated with bandaging, right? And so I kind of, when I'm doing some of these courses, I kind of say, hey, don't put these bandaging and garments necessarily always in a separate category. Some of the best therapists that I've worked with and know, kind of combine the two, and make a hybrid approach to it, depending on the patient. So again, this kind of just goes through some of those areas. So specifically skin protection, these are some of the areas that we have. At the most basic, we have the TG tubular, right? That is its most basic used skin protection. TG cotton and soft, those products are used because, again, it's actually going to be a little bit softer than tubular, and it's going to be a little bit more forgiving on the patient's skin. So, if you have a patient with a lot of wounds, elderly patients that can have skin tears easily, TG tubular is good for, 60% of the population or whatever it is. But, we also have more forgiving first protection, stockinettes that are a little bit more forgiving to the skin. So the second, we have Molast, Translast, and Rockolast. I will tell you, for those of you who have used a lot of finger and toe bandaging, something to highlight is Translast Classic. We discontinued it during the pandemic because of resources, but now we've brought it back. It is widely the most used within lymphedema clinics. I will say Molast, kind of started there, and again, it's a very, very good product. But when therapists use Translast, it's a little bit more forgiving. It has a little bit more stretch. Overall, I typically hear therapists definitely prefer the Translast Classic. So please, if you're using Molast, or if you're just not even sure of the Translast Classic, please let myself or Performance Health know. And really, that's on any of these products, and we'll make sure that you get a sample of these. So then we go to the third step, which is, your synthetic padding or your foam padding. So this is where we have, the second layer, the third layer. Solona, it has more of a synthetic padding. It's a little bit more stretchy. Rosidel Soft, again, is a little bit more substantial. Either or are good. I will say most do keep both on stock, depending on what the patient needs. And then this is really the step 4. This is the meat and the potatoes of things. This is your foam, right? So this is where we have Comprex, and Comprex come in sheets, and you can see, that first example, we had a therapist actually make that up, and you actually go ahead and slip your foot right through that hole opening, and then it folds up as a leaf petal and allows the physical therapist to go ahead and bandage over top of it. So again, with these Comprex, and even that Comprex 2, which is more of a channeling foam sheet, you're really able to manipulate a lot of these, the step 4, which is the focal compression grade foam, to a patient's limb, regardless of the shape, and how irregular or formative it may be. So, this is really where we get into the foam part. One of those garments that you saw on those foams, it was swell spots. Basically, what swell spots are, and you can see it highlights kind of right there. They're basically just multiple different density as chopped foam used for certain areas of the body. So a lot of lymphedema therapists, make these up professionally, but, these are just channel foam ready for you to go. So depending on where, they go, we can have one on the thigh. We can do something, this is a breast swell spot right up there. That's fairly popular garment. So again, these are just to help with that focal compression. And so you can use this not only with bandaging, but as we start transitioning into the compression garments, they can also be used in conjunction with those as well. And like I said, as I said in the beginning, don't put the foam bandaging and necessarily the garments in separate components, because as you can start to see, they do start to gel a little bit. Lastly, I'm going to really just talk about the Rose LK. That is the short stretch bandage. It comes in multiple different sizes, starting at 4 centimeter, with the hand going all the way up to the 10 centimeter. That's more common for the lower extremity. So this is your short stretch bandage. This goes over top of all of the foam products to really round out everything. So that's what you see here. This is a tape. If you prefer to use it, you can also order the tape and go ahead, and that will go ahead and tape down the Rose LK and help affix it and stay in place a little bit as well. So that kind of rounds out the bandaging portion of today. So again, what do we get with CDT? It's all of these things. It's swelling reduction, fibrosis change, but mostly it's honestly improves quality of life, which relieves, discomfort, all of these things. That's the most important thing, part of this. It just overall improves the patient's quality of life. And so you can see, as we talked about the bandaging, there's a lot of steps there. And so if you're asking a patient after the care of a physical therapist kind of transition in that maintenance phase, if you're asking a patient to do that day in, day out, it can be really difficult for a patient to go ahead and manage that. So that's where we really start to see, okay, if we start to look at the patient's quality of life, we need to look at some of these garment aspects, right? These are more of the long-term products. So one of the first products that I'm going to talk about today is TributeWrap, okay? So basically what TributeWrap is multiple different densities of chopped foam built all into a garment. And if you recall, some of those short stretch garments, so the bandaging, the Rose LK, right there, that hook is your short stretch bandage, right? And then the rest of the garments, as we see here, is the foam. So this, you can start to kind of see, acts. It can absolutely act as that active phase garment, but this is where you start to see the transition into the maintenance phase, right? So right away, it's off the shelf, okay? So multiple different density of chopped foam in an off-the-shelf version of a garment. What does that mean? It means we have certain styles available, right? So all of these styles that you see, small, medium, large, going up into extra large, and then we also have multiple different lengths that come in with it. So, on the left-hand side, you see the TributeWrap head and neck. That's the one size actually fits most. And we have two different styles, the trach and the non-trach version. But then you can see here in the glove, the arm, the lower extremity. That is where we get to see some of those garments that go from small all the way to extra large. And so you still have that foam component that really helps with the breakdown of fibrosis to keep the skin soft, to hopefully kind of build off of what CDT was done in the earlier phase and still be able to decongest patients. This is have those pull tabs, so patient really is able to go ahead and get their fingers in there and then go ahead and pull and get that on. Also, in the upper extremity, the lower extremity, minus the head and neck, it comes with automatically a sleep sleeve. So this goes over top and it comes automatically with the garment. The sleep sleeve really is there for, again, it just kind of protects the garment, right? So if the patient's sleeping in at night, if they're using it as a day wear garment, it helps just to not catch on other things, because the reality of this garment is it can be day or night. It can be active or maintenance phase. We've seen it used in transition. Now, obviously, clinically based, this is more for a nighttime low activity use garment, but certainly we've seen this used in the clinical setting in the active and maintenance phase, and certainly during the night and daytime. So that sleep sleeve helps and just covers the garment, keeps it a little bit on the cleaner edge, or if you're kind of sleeping in it, helps that Velcro not catch on certain things. And if you're wondering what the foam kind of does, and this is again below knee, thigh high, and so this is a real life patient going ahead and donning the garment all the way up to, you can see what ultimately is full leg coverage. And you can see that's the effect. That is a good thing. That means that chopped foam, that channeling is working. That's going ahead, and it's basically like that chopped foam providing mini massage, right, as that patient's walking around. So that is a typical result of what we see within the TributeWrap. And honestly, these can be seen usually within about 10 minutes of wearing the garment. Obviously, every patient is different. Every skin presentation is different, but it's very common to see that level of decongesting in a patient. And again, that's a really, really good thing. TributeWrap, this is an actual patient. You can see, this was before. You can see how much compression they had, or how much swelling was actually there. And this is after. I mean, that's pretty darn dramatic. But if you look at the testimonial, it's even more. It's, it feels so much better. I can talk again. He just said how much more comfortable he was going back to that kind of quality of life aspect. That is so important after that CDT, that active phase. And this is the maintenance phase. So again, this is real life head and neck patients kind of talking about how much of their quality of life has improved because of these garments. So that is essentially TributeWrap. Now, going into ReadyWrap, this is also, I will tell you, a garment that is used day, night. Certainly can be used during the active as well as the maintenance phase. This is probably a garment that I see used in clinical settings, from day to night to active to maintenance and everything in between. Because this basically mimics, and you'll see later here in slides, this mimics what therapists are doing with short stretch bandaging. Just here in this initial setting, you can see in that calf, it's a 50% overlap all the way up. That's exactly what lymphedema therapists are taught to do with that bandaging. So again, it mimics what's being done in the clinic to the maintenance phase. And as I stated before, that's also why you start to see this garment really kind of start creeping also into that maintenance, into that active phase and maintenance phase setting. So again, a very widely used products, and I'll get into some of the styles. So again, it is off the shelf garment. So, different sizes that come with it: small, medium, large, going all the way up to double XL. Like I think in the calf version of the double XL, it goes up to about 68 centimeters. So again, that's quite a big circumference. Again, in that thigh, I believe the largest is approximately 89 to 90, somewhere in that range. So again, a very large range that we're able to accommodate. And it goes from the foot, calf, knee, and thigh. So all can be done off the shelf, but we also have upper extremity that you see in those bottom right two images. We also have a gauntlet as well as an arm. And again, multiple different lengths, multiple different girths. First of all, I should say, if you get the lower extremity, it will automatically come with a compression liner. So the foot, the calf, the knee, the thigh will all come with an automatic liner. However, if you wanted a compression liner with the calf version, you can order what's called the Fusion Kit that adds minimal compression on the foot. So it's a sock-like foot compression garment, and then has little to no compression in the calf, and you go ahead and put that calf portion over. We also do have more robust foot options, okay, that are available if you need. That top one is just the ReadyWrap foot piece. That bottom left one is the CT, stands for contour, really is able to contour around the foot, followed by the SL, which stands for slim. Can be made to fit in any size, any style of shoe. So In the foot options, we do have a couple of different options available, depending on what their lifestyle looks like. And then going into the calf, the knee, the thigh, or the upper extremity as well. So as you can kind of see here, we have, it's basically, those are your low stretch material. Like that is essentially a Rosedale. Think of your Rosedale K, kind of similar to that, except it's a lower stretch than that. So you're basically just going full stretch over, creating that 50% overlap. Also, the garment is relatively easy to don because it's color coded. So here you can see, you start with that long piece of Velcro, the white piece of Velcro, and then you go little piece of Velcro, which is that light blue, to larger piece of Velcro, the longer light blue, and then again, shorter dark blue to the longer dark blue, so on and so forth, making a 50% overlap all the way up. Okay, this is huge, not only for wound care, because obviously patients don't want to be putting a garment over top and disturbing any of the progress that's been made on wound healing. So this is a garment made heavily in the wound space, but again, also in the lymphedema and that that patient care space, because again, asking a nurse to do all of those different bandaging day in and day out can be super confusing. This simplifies the matter. This is much, much easier for really any staff within a particular facility, whether it be a VA, a home health, wherever, for nurses and staff to manage rather than all of the bandaging. Much, much more easier to manage from a garment perspective. From a case study, so this is a competitor's garment, right? Now, the reason that I've kind of talked about that 50% overlap, why that's so it's so important is because, so this is a competitor garment, right? This is a garment that comes together. And in theory, that's wonderful. But what happens when you get up and you start moving around and you start shifting? Well, gaps can start to occur, right? So right there. And in the lymphedema world, gapping is not great because now all of a sudden we can have a wound on our hands, right? So now we're treating a whole different thing. Whereas with the ReadyWrap, this is a patient and that figure A, okay, that is not the correct way to don a ReadyWrap. Okay, I'm just gonna go ahead and say it right now. That is not the correct way. But more importantly, even though it's donned incorrectly, it doesn't matter. You still have a 50% overlap all the way up for the patient, right? And so that is in figure B, you'll see, okay, patient's skin is still good. Actually, reacted quite well. And then C is when the patient came back and was taught one more time how to do it. And you can see, did it perfectly. 50% overlap all the way up the limb. So again, this is it's a much more easier garment to handle, especially because, real life, we have to have the expectation that, mistakes are going to happen. And if the mistakes happen, that it's not causing more harm. And, we see this specifically with ReadyWrap. Very easy to manage. Again, we can really start to see, with certain patients, manage swelling, bilateral ReadyWraps, and look at the transformation there. That's incredible, just from a garment, right? And you can see that's what those ReadyWraps look like. The back here, you see that spine, okay? That also helps the garment stay up. So it does a really, really good job, not only of being effective, but it stays up, stays in place, very easy to manage. So again, these are real life, examples of how these garments can be so helpful. And again, of how simple, right? This isn't very complicated. This is a garment that you go ahead, don, and makes massive differences. Lastly, well, I shouldn't say almost lastly, we're going to get into the circular versus flat knit garments, okay? So, which leads me to ExoStrong, okay? These are off-the-shelf flat knit garments. This is now typically really a maintenance phase garment. This is where we kind of transition out of that, okay, is it an active? Is it a maintenance phase? Sure, I can kind of use them both. this is really where we see a garment using more in the maintenance phase because of the high activity used during the day. And again, this isn't off the shelf. So again, when I'm talking about off the shelf, I'm talking about small, medium, large, extra large, goes and talks about the different also lengths and girths that come within there. So again, in a lot of the garments that I'm going to show next in this ExoStrong, which is an off-the-shelf flat knit garment, multiple different girths, multiple different lengths as well. So here you can see ExoStrong. It's 20 to 30 compression. First of all, that's what you should know. So off the shelf. In the glove image, we have multiple different glove lengths, ranging from full finger, half finger, quarter finger, to a gauntlet. Okay, and that's again all off the shelf. So you can get where all the fingers would be full finger, all the fingers would be half or quarter. So you have a lot of different sizes within that glove option. And then again, you see the arm up above. You have multiple different lengths and girths that can be associated with it. And then same thing with the legs, you have in the calf as well in a thigh high. Okay, so those are two other styles that are available in ExoStrong off the shelf. And when we're talking about off the shelf, we're just talking about affordability, right? It tends to be a little bit more affordable for the patients and really encompasses, a large patient population. Lastly, I like to make the joke that this, as well as ReadyWrap, come in any color you like, as long as it's black or beige. So you have your color options there in ReadyWrap and ExoStrong. And then the TributeWrap kind of rounding back to that garment, that more is just in a black style of garment. So this is kind of where we get to the wound care portion of, and this is one of the last products that we're really going to talk about today. So really just thank you for taking the time and being on with us and listening to not only the maintenance phase, active phase maintenance phase garments. And, you can kind of see the real life examples of how these garments are brought in. This is Debrisoft. So this is a really interesting product. This is definitely more on the debridement side of things. So it's made for wound care more specifically, but this is a great example of used in the lymphedema clinic with hyperkeratotic skin. So that patient before, basically Debrisoft is all these millions of different fibers, right? The minute that you get them wet, and we have a couple different styles, whether it be a lolly and a lollipop for deep tunneling wounds, to more of a larger style pad to a smaller pad. But again, you can go ahead, and what you want to do is you want to get it wet to the point of saturation with, typically in the US we use saline. I will say in other countries like France, UK, they use tap water, but here again in the stateside, we typically use that. You can certainly use Vosh too. So again, you go ahead and get it wet to the point of saturation, because that is the most important part of this, right? That saturation, get it wet till it's dripping. And no, don't wring it out. Please do not wring it out. And the point is, get it wet to the point of saturation and it's dripping. That's why I say it so many times. But you can see, just after one use, right? And it is a non-reusable pad. So this is just one use of a Debrisoft pad using on that hyperkeratosis. And it's just from a time perspective, ease of use. Also, quite frankly, you don't have to train staff to do this. In a lot of our clinical trials, you'll actually see the patient doing this themselves, just doing a circular motion right onto their wound bed or onto their skin. And so again, in terms of teaching staff on how to use a particular product, kind of even going back to the ReadyWraps and the TributeWraps, this again, you don't have to have a day, a week, 2 weeks teaching staff, bringing them up. It's a relatively easy product to go ahead and use, and again, makes a very large difference. So with that being said, that pretty much concludes my portion of the presentation today. I'm going to go ahead and send it over to Trish with Performance Health to kind of close this out. And, then if we need to answer questions, we can go ahead after that.
So Paul, thank you so much for the presentation and all the information, and thank you to the attendees. We just wanted to, thank L&R for their partnership and offer. I did put my contact information in the chat if you need to find your local rep, but we are partnering with L&R across the country. We can help you get samples of some of the products that Paul presented today. We can also get you some product brochures, and they have great patient education brochures as well if you need those. And then we also have links to product videos, but if you want to set up a one-on-one in-service, certainly please email me and I'll get in touch with your local field rep. You can also call me as well, as I'm on the national accounts team and here to help. So thanks so much. I don't
Thank
see
you,
any
everyone.
Yeah, I don't see any questions in the chat. If you guys have any questions, I don't see any.
We have one question.
Well, thank you again, Trish. I appreciate it.
We got a question, Paul.
Yes.
Oh, all right.
Amy asks, so is the tribute just for nighttime?
Great question. That is, no, not at all. That tribute is, in a trip, we also have another product that I didn't talk about here today, Tribute Night. That is more of a custom garment that is exclusively or tends to be more exclusively used for the nighttime. But TributeWrap, we came out as a secondary part of the garment, not only to make it more affordable for patients, but also because we started to see that patients aren't just using it during the day or during the nighttime. They are using it during the day as well. If you're just kind of lounging around your home, there's no reason why a patient can or cannot use that garment during the day. I think it's kind of common to be said that probably a patient's not going to go to the grocery store, although they certainly could in a garment like that. But it is a little bit on the bulkier side. They may want to be more in the confines of their home, but certainly that this is a day, a night. And then, as I even mentioned before, this is also a garment where you start to see bleeding more into that maintenance phase and transition, that maintenance phase and that active phase to maintenance phase. So again, I could talk for hours about how I've seen clinicians use both the TributeWrap and the ReadyWrap in a night, day, a active maintenance phase setting. But that would require us here the whole day, and all of us do not have that much time, but certainly can be day or night.
We have another question asking if you would recommend this garment for someone who isn't ambulatory.
Yeah, I think, for sure. Yes. I think that what I'll kind of put the caveat on that is, each patient is obviously unique. Please, even reach out to your Performance Health rep, reach out to me specifically on a case by case, but absolutely this garment, both ReadyWrap and TributeWrap, you see used in very much in those settings. So long of the short, yes, you can.
Looks like we have one more question on how well does the TributeWrap head and neck accommodate a CPAP device?
Very well, actually. So certainly depending on the CPAP device that you have and, where that's being located. Now, again, as a person who has actually used the CPAP device in the past, certainly there are challenges that can be, but absolutely, depending on if it's going right into the nose. Obviously, if you have the mask, that is going to be a little bit trickier. But because you have that, and again, it's a little hard to tell up there, but this essentially is a short stretch. It does help and can accommodate a lot of different bulk if you do have it. So certainly depending on the CPAP, it can even include the mask. Again, I'm not saying that is the most comfortable of settings. Something like where it is more in the nose would be much, much easier. And I know that CPAP are ever evolving, but yeah, there you go. That's the answer. So yes and no, yes, but might not be the most comfortable of things.
It looks like those are all of the questions that we have right now. Thank you so much for joining us